Hello everyone, I'm back again, and this time I'm going to be giving you a first impressions review of my latest TV to my setup here. And I have to say a first impressions review because there are so many things that I have not really had the time to test yet, and I can give you kind of an idea as to what I think about it, but first of all, this TV's not been calibrated yet, so it just has the stock presets. And second of all, there's still a few things that I need to try out in more detail. And so, with that said, I'll let you know what my thoughts are so far. So, regarding setup of this TV and any OLED for that matter are very tricky to set up. This is because the screens are so fragile, all it takes is a little bit too much pressure on them and they're toast. So here's what you have to do. You have to first take the TV out of the box, obviously, but then you have to lay the TV on a flat, soft surface or on top of the box like we did when we were setting mine up. And then after that, you have to lift from the bottom down here and only slightly above this here with the second hand just above it. Any higher than that is a big no-no. So this, no. And up here, no. You shouldn't do that. You can damage the screen and that'll be it for you. So this TV has 4 HDMI ports, 2 on the side. I don't know if you can see them. I don't think you can. They're kind of tucked in there. 2 on the side here and 1 over there. Now, I got the LG B9, and you're probably wondering, why would you get the B9 when the C9 is, rated so much better? Well, you know what? It's because of price, A, and B, because the C9, I just couldn't find it in the size that I wanted. I originally had a Q9FN 75-inch, and so I wanted to get the closest thing to that, and the only size I could get was a 77-inch. So I searched high and low for the C9 and 77 inches, and the prices on them in where I live are just atrocious. They're horrible. And, at this point, you wonder if it's actually more worth it for you to buy the CX. But the CX did take away a couple of features that the C9 had. So, but at the same time, it's added more recent features like premium FreeSync for gamers. So pick your poison, really. And I did. I chose this, and you know what? So far, I'm actually fairly satisfied with it. In the store, I couldn't really tell the difference between the B9 and the C9. It was, or when I could, it was very slight. One thing I will say about the C9 in regards to the B9 is, out of the box, it comes a lot more close to what colors should look like, what it's supposed to look like. As opposed to the B9, where it's just nowhere near that. It's completely oversaturated, and the only way to fix it is with calibration after about 200 hours of use. So, there is that. So let's talk about OLED for a minute. OLED, or Organic Light Emitting Diode, basically means that, or is short for meaning self-emissive pixels. So what does that mean for you? It means that pixels turn themselves on and off only as needed. So this allows the TV to get true black. And you know what? In the beginning, I was very skeptical. I thought, oh, true black, that's just another buzz marketing term. Actually, it's really not. It does make quite a bit of difference. And it's because the contrast and colors of OLED can get so well, more so the contrast. The contrast of OLED can get so well done by the OLEDs themselves that, honestly, I was starting to notice details in my games and movies and whatnot that I didn't notice on my other TV. But I think that all comes back to local dimming versus actual, pixels turning themselves off. And it is quite a stark difference, and I'll show it to you later. But yeah, the other difference between OLED and LCD is LCD or LEDs or however you want to say them, QLEDs, have a backlight to illuminate the pixels, which passes through a quantum dot filter, which then passes through a liquid crystal filter, which gives you your image on screen. Now, I will say this. In terms of brightness, QLED beats this thing into the ground. Like, brightness on QLEDs is just crazy bright, to the extent of it might actually be a little bit much. But here's the thing. Some of you may have very, very bright rooms or rooms with like very large windows, and QLED might actually be better for you. But this is not a QLED versus OLED comparison. This is just talking about OLED, so I'm getting ahead of myself. But I'd just like to talk about the differences that I've noticed so far. This TV also incorporates Dolby Atmos pass-through over ARC, a feature that I never thought I would care about as much as I do now. And the reason why I care about it more is because the newer consoles, best example, the Xbox One X, cannot really pass through VRR over through the soundbar. So on my old TV, you could only plug the Xbox One X directly through the soundbar in order to get Atmos, because the TV itself did not pass through Atmos. In doing so, you lost some of the features that make the Xbox One X a very potent machine. But then when you plug it directly into the TV on LG, it automatically recognizes that it's Xbox, and it automatically implements the features, and then Atmos automatically kicks in. And that's just such a breath of fresh air. It really does make a difference. And it's a very crazy one at that. Also, I don't have any HDMI 2.1 sources at the present moment to test, so it's impossible for me to really say, if there's a really huge difference between HDMI 2.1 and 2.0. And I think that there is, but again, I've got no real sources to test this. But it was on my checklist of things to get when I bought my TV. 48 gigabits per second. Not 40 gigabits per second like the CX, 48 gigabits per second. Now, that's not knocking the CX, though. The CX is a beautiful TV. Absolutely gorgeous. And some of the features that it has, like the premium FreeSync and the G-Sync, and on top of that, it has VRR. I'd say that for a gamer, that more than makes up for the fact that it doesn't have 48 gigabits per second. But only the future will tell, right? Like, with those variable refresh rates, I'm sure that the CX is it could probably put this TV to shame in a number of different areas when it comes to gaming. But who knows? I would have to see them side by side, and I don't think that there would be a massive difference between the two. One thing I've noticed about LG OLEDs in particular is there's very, very, very slight variations and differences between the models, but the picture quality almost remains exactly the same, with, again, minor changes and differences. But, it is there. I'm not going to say it's not. So let's talk about the elephant in the room for OLED. The dreaded burn-in. For gamers, this is, a deal breaker for a lot of people. So, in my time owning the TV over 2 weeks, I've played a little bit of both HDR and SDR content. HDR on this TV, wow. There are details like light beams and just the way that the characters look. I'll show you this later, of course, but for example, you can see pores on their face, or the way that light shines through a window or through some trees or the foliage. There are details that just absolutely pop because of the individual emissive pixels turning themselves on and off and on as needed, that you just do not see on some other TVs. Does that make me pro OLED? No, but it's worth mentioning. It really is, because it does make quite a bit of difference, in my opinion. Another thing that's really nice about this TV is the interface. It can be a little complicated if you don't know what you're doing, but the interface is one of the best that I've personally used, in my opinion. It's not as straightforward as Tizen from Samsung, but it's straightforward enough that you can find everything you're looking for if you know what you're doing. And it's smooth. Now, mind you, my TV uses the Alpha Gen 7 processor, not the Alpha 9. So it will run slower or a little bit more laggier than, you know, the C9 or the CX. But honestly, in real-world viewing, I haven't really noticed it too much. So, yeah. I noticed with OLEDs that they have noticed as well, in SDR content, burn-in is a lot more likely. And so what happens is when you play an SDR game, so a game in like 1080p or, you know, 720p or 480p, what the TV will do is it'll automatically turn on eco-saving mode under game lighting so that it dims the picture. Now, for some this might be a deal breaker. I will say this, it took some getting used to for me because I'm used to my SDR games playing in bright, vibrant colors. But again, when I played my SDR games and got used to it, there were details showing that I could not see on my previous TV. Like particle effects. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. When I was playing Tomb Raider on this TV versus on my other TV, when I was walking through the forest and there's little kind of dust specks or something in the air, I don't remember, or flower specks, I'm not sure exactly what they are, but they show up a lot more clear on an OLED as opposed to an LCD or whatever. And I think, again, it's because the local dimming algorithm, in order to compensate for the lack of true black, is crushing some of the details. Now, that's not to say that the local dimming algorithm is bad. It's not. It works really well. But again, local dimming versus true black, there's really no comparison there. True black will always win. And in that regard, contrast on the OLED always wins. But color on the QLED will always win. And so, you know, you kind of have to weigh your options between the two. What's more important to you? Brightness and color? Vividness? Or, you know, contrast and blacks and clarity? Which one is more important, you know? You guys can decide. So, another thing about this TV is that it automatically detects devices plugged into it, and it'll show them under the HDMI inputs. Unless, of course, they're plugged in through the soundbar and the soundbar is passing them through. So, again, similar to the Tizen software, but a much better implementation of it, because the Tizen software would often get confused, whereas this one, even when plugged in through a soundbar, it doesn't really get confused. It's able to figure out that you have activated a game console, and it'll turn on Instant Game Response, or ALLM, Auto Low Latency Mode. Now, I've talked a lot about gaming, and I'm going to talk about more things soon, but I will say this. Gaming on the B9, or I'm sure the C9 or even the C10, holy crap. Like, the response time literally puts most LEDs to shame. Now, that's not to say that LEDs don't have a good input lag, because they do. But the way that the OLED is able to process motion in newer games, and I'll get to that in a minute, in newer games and in more higher resolution games, it's just crazy. There's virtually no lag. I mean, it's there, obviously, but it's hardly noticeable. And yeah. So let's talk about, go back to burn-in for a minute. Burn-in, let's say, for example, you were playing God of War 3 on your OLED, and you were playing it for hours on end, and you would have to play it for, like, probably more like weeks for this to happen, but let's say you were playing it, and let's say this picture on screen popped up, just like right about now. Okay, now imagine, if you will, that the omega symbol and the hit points, you can see it in your image here, right here. It's over top of that image. That is burn-in. And that cannot be fixed. And just so you guys know, and this is kind of one negative I have about LG, they consider burn-in such as that to be abuse of your panel, and they will not cover it under warranty. Be aware of this if you're considering getting an OLED TV. If you burn something in, it's highly likely LG will not cover it. I mean, you could still try, but I have a feeling that they'll probably come up with a reason as to why they can't do it, which is unfortunate. But c'est la vie. Another thing about this TV, or LG OLEDs in general, I've noticed that the reds seem to be a bit off. Now, I haven't had this calibrated yet, so that might be why. But the red almost looks like kind of an orangey red, rather than a nice dark red. And I noticed it right away when I flipped on my QLED yesterday and was watching something with a lot of red in it, and I noticed it and I was like, oh, that doesn't look quite how I've been seeing it in my living room. So, you know, little minor details and nitpicks here and there, but it is worth pointing out. Another thing about OLEDs is they automatically use blue light. Blue light will keep you up all night, so what you should do is you should activate what's known as an eye comfort mode, and I will show you that in a few minutes. Another thing, when you're first setting up your OLED, you're greeted by, I must say, about a half dozen agreement screens. Do you agree to this? Yes. Do you agree to these terms? Absolutely. Well, what about these terms? Yes. And it just keeps going on and on and on. So fair warning that when first starting up this TV, there's going to be a little bit of a, I'm going to say, arduous process where you have to kind of agree and check off everything or uncheck some things, or, you know, it'll depend on the user. But really, it is a little bit annoying because you just want to start up your TV and fire it up and test it out, and now you got to go through all of these agreement screens. So yeah, you know, another thing to keep in mind about OLEDs is they come in these massive thick boxes, like thick, I would say almost as thick as my Nakamichi woofer, about half the thickness of that. Because the screen is so delicate. I mentioned that earlier, but seriously, I'm not kidding. So, you know, keep that in mind. Like, if you're going to get one of these things, even if it's a 55-inch, the box is going to be a thick mother. Because you need to make sure that your screen is protected from all damage. I will say that of course, peeling the film off once it's actually set up is so freaking satisfying, man. But I'm sure you've seen that on other reviewers' channels, so I'm not going to gush about it. Now, that being said, let's go over some settings. So the first thing that I recommend you do is when you first open up your menu here, your home menu, right in around this area here is an ad, a really annoying one at that. So open up your settings by pressing the settings button. Scroll down to all settings. Scroll down to general. Additional settings. And turn off home promotion. Because, I mean, you don't want to get ads. You get enough ads on YouTube. You get enough ads on Amazon. Ads, ads, ads. I bet every single social media platform you have is flooded with them. So you don't want them on your TV too. So if you're like me, shut that crap off. The next thing you're going to do is when you're in game mode, now mind you, it's in gallery picture mode right now, and you can see like all the little additional settings here. So I'm just going to fire up one of my game consoles. Let's fire up the Nintendo Switch. And we're going to note how it detected it was a Nintendo Switch right away. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice is the screen is a little bit dimmer. That's because game mode has kicked in and eco-saving light mode has kicked in. So check this out. When you go into settings, I talked about this, but I'm just going to show you in person. Go into all, oops, wrong button. Sorry. All settings, go to your picture settings. Go into game. And look, OLED light energy saving, and you cannot change that. You can't change it. So keep that in mind, that when you're playing 1080p, 720p, 480p, that will turn on automatically. Now, when in HDR mode or even this mode, what I typically do is I go scroll down to expert settings, and when playing 1080p mode, if you introduce a couple of frames, yes, it will introduce lag, but you can turn on super resolution mode, and super resolution mode will sharpen the 1080p image using interpolation. You know, normally I would say don't do this, but honestly the lag is so minimal that it won't really bother you. Also, I highly recommend you turn on dynamic contrast. I usually turn it to about medium. I find that it makes the picture pop a lot more. Also turn on dynamic contrast when you first fire up your HDR in PlayStation 4 and or Xbox One. Trust me, you'll thank me later. It really makes the HDR look a lot less washed out. Now that being said, compared to my TV, the C9 can get a little brighter, and so can the CX. So if you have either of those models, you might not have to do this. But I still recommend doing it, as it brings out kind of like an extra punch, if you will, in your picture. Okay, so we are going to fire up our usual demos. I'm not gonna, I guess I could, no, I'm not gonna do a Nintendo Switch demo today, I don't think. Unless I've got a digital game here somewhere. Do I have a digital game? No, I do not. So I might pause for a second, guys. 1 second, I'll be right back. So we're gonna fire up Mario Odyssey, but it was in my my pack for work, so I just needed to get it out of it, because that's kind of my go-to demo. And you'll be able to see the kind of orangey red as well when I first fire this thing up. Also, you'll be able to see the true black. Okay, carefully lift this back up so that I don't turn off the recording. Okay, so now we're back. So, oh, for heaven's sakes, Nintendo. Alright. Why is it whenever I do a review, I gotta deal with this kind of nonsense? Oh, another thing, guys, if you haven't noticed already, this TV's not very good with reflections. So during a dark scene like that one there, or, you know, a dark screen, you'll notice the reflections of my lamps. You see that? 1, 2. There's the lamp again over on there. So keep that in mind. If you got like an extra bright room with a lot of lamps or a lot of lights, this may not be a good choice for you. It's one thing about OLED that I noticed immediately. But that being said, again, true black versus... And look how dark that is. But again, you can see my full reflection. Hi, guys. You couldn't see that in the other TV. And then there's my lamp over there and, you know, over to the other side. Oh, another thing that you should do, well, you don't have to, but I recommend you do so, is go into all settings and go into additional settings under picture, I think. And turn on eye comfort mode so that you have a warmer color, if you prefer that. If you don't, leave it off. But just remember, blue light keeps you up all night. So maybe activate this mode when it's nighttime and deactivate it when it's daytime. But I'll leave that up to you guys. Alright, now going back to it. I don't know if you can see it, but the red is kind of orangey. It might not show up on my camera. I'm going to try my best to show it to you guys. Yeah, see how that looks there? It's not really red, it's kind of a light sort of orange. if you will. So I'm hoping calibration takes care of that. But weirdly, the background buildings are dark red. No, even those look orange, at least from where I'm sitting, but they don't look orange on camera. So there's virtually no lag whatsoever. You can literally circle Mario here. This isn't a really good example, though. So I'm going to fire up my usual Gears of War 5. I'm hoping I can show you HDR, but it may not show up on camera. I'm trying my best with what I have to work with. So Xbox is now starting. We're going to switch inputs. And just so you know, guys, this is the remote that you're going to be using with the LG OLED TVs. And there's your settings button there, your home button there. This button activates the quote-unquote assistants. I'm not going to say their names because it could activate some of your devices. This is a Netflix button, this is a Prime button, and this is your sources button. Typically, these are most of the buttons you'll be using other than the volume up and down. You can also create shortcuts using the 3-dot button up there, but I don't really find a use for that, or at least I haven't yet. Might find a use for it later. But yeah. Okay, so let's fire up... Oops. Let's fire up Gears. And just when you first start up Gears, you'll note the color and the clarity. Now watch HDR there. You see it in the corner there? It's saying that HDR is now active. If that's not activated, then you're not playing something in HDR. And again, look, you can see my lamp there, and you can see my lamp to the side there. So again, the lamps are kind of annoying. What I will say is this. You can... if you're in a dark room, literally this TV will just blow you away. But if you're in a bright room, and that's the reason why I have the lights on right now, because I wanted to show you guys how, you know, having a bright room or a brightly lit room or even just 2 lights in one room can really reflect off this TV badly. While I'm at it, I'm just going to take a little walk. So right now, we're directly in front of the TV. Note how crystal clear it is. But watch this. Now we're going to sit off to the left of it here. And it still maintains its clarity. Lots of reflection still, but it is what it is. Sit a little bit more to the left, and it still maintains its clarity. So one thing OLED, despite the reflection problem, OLED is really good with angles. But if you don't believe me, let's go over to the other side here. On an angle, slowly moving to the right. And you have to see it to believe it. And while we're on the topic of seeing it to believe it, look how thin this TV is. So this is my finger, and it's about half the size of my fingertip, which is just crazy. But that also, again, makes the TV more fragile. Sorry, I know I'm mentioning that a lot, but it does come into play a lot here. So here we go, Gears 5. I'll play you my usual demo so you can kind of see how it looks. Look at the detail on the clouds and the sky and just the overall punch of the picture. Uh-oh. What the heck is that? Okay, there we go. So you've seen me play this game on my other TV before, so you should be able to see now kind of the difference between the colors of the 2 TVs. So, not as much color in some retrospects, but way more detail on the characters and the gear and just everything. And the HDR on OLEDs just cannot be beat. It might not be able to get as bright and vivid as a QLED, but it doesn't matter because the detail that it pulls out is just insane. Hopefully I can show you on camera. It really is something to behold. So first of all, look how nice and dark the background is here. Ignore my lamps. And, you know, how light that area is through the trees and how much more detail is showing up in this image than in my previous videos. Okay, come on. Load. And now watch this. Look at the detail on her face. And now we're going to go to our usual scene. Again, these colors are over contrasty, so take this with a grain of salt.
Alright, Control, I'm going in. Control? Really? I have a name.
Now I've got the volume lower so you can hear me talk.
Fix the brakes, Bear. I mean, Control. And we're already breaking enough of as it is. What's in doesn't know won't hurt her. This is my call, alright? If the First Minister doesn't like it, she can yell at me. Which she almost certainly will. Just tell us where to go, Control. I'll do my best.
Okay, now watch this.
No one's been in that facility for like 25 years.
Yeah, that's pretty evident.
Virtually no lag when spinning around in a circle, and everything maintains its clarity. Look at the light beam and the way it comes through from above like that, and the detail on the rainbow and the way that the water is coming down as well. These are details that the OLED just seems to pull out in spades. And then look at the water too, and the ripples in the water and the rocks, and just details that, again, you don't see quite as much on other TV technologies at the present moment. In the future, things may change, but at the present moment, I have not seen better HDR than on OLED. That's not a knock, again, against QLED. Just in my personal experience, I think that HDR is a little bit, just a little bit, superior on OLED because of the detail that it can pull out. Alright, now that being said, that's an HDR movie, or sorry, an HDR game. I can't believe I said movie. Wow, I'm tired. Okay, so now we're going to, you know, compare with, say, just a regular movie. Pay close attention to the movie that I put on. I'll point some stuff out just so you can see it for yourself. Okay, now I'm gonna pause it here. Look at the detail of the stars and the background galaxy and the way that the Universal logo is coming up in the movie of Jurassic Park. Now it faded there for a minute because I stopped it, but like, look at it. Look how crystal clear that is. No star detail is crushed due to the individual pixels. It does make a difference, and again, these are OLED strengths. Now that being said, if I were to say that OLED would have a weakness, it would definitely be with brightness, overall brightness, and the fact that, you know, SDR content needs to be dimmed, otherwise it could cause a problem. You know, that's something that cannot be really ignored, right? So, you know, I would say that's one downside to this entire system. Okay, so moving on. We're going to activate our Apple TV. Here it comes. And this is another thing that OLEDs just excel in, and that is Dolby Vision. So, you know, I really thought that the whole HDR war was silly. You know, I didn't understand what the big deal was. Uh-oh. That's not coming through very clear, is it? It's not coming through at all. Hello? Okay. 1 second, guys. My Apple TV apparently decided to crash on me today. Just because. Oh, brother. Okay. Come on. Come on, my video's going into overtime as it is. So this is another thing I've noticed about, you know, the Nakamichi. As much as I like the Nakamichi, sometimes it has handshake issues. Give me a second, guys. Come on. this is great for a demo. Thanks for this. Shoot. Why isn't there any signal? Okay, turn it off. Okay, now turn it back on. Yeah, I love the Nakamichi bar, guys, but sometimes it does give me issues from time to time like this one. Okay, come on. Come on. Stupid thing. Okay, come on. Okay. ARC not working. Come on. Sorry guys, this was going so well up until this point. Okay. For some reason, my Apple TV just doesn't want to work for us. So I'm going to reset it. Stand by. There we go. I got it to work, but I had to unplug the darn thing. So Dolby Vision automatically activates, and you know what? Dolby Vision, I hate to say it, Samsung should really just swallow their pride and pay the licensing fee to Dolby Vision, because HDR10 Plus is just not as widely supported, and it does make a difference. Dolby Vision looks stunning on the Apple TV, and even when playing SDR content, Dolby Vision pops. Like, I'll use my usual demo here. Yeah. Where is it? There it is. And again, take a look at the difference between the true black when this first starts up. Look at that, eh? Like, it's literally true black. For cinema and dark rooms, OLED is fantastic. That's not to say QLEDs are not fantastic. They are. They're just a heck of a lot brighter. And they might not get some details due to having either processing turned off in game mode, or having too much processing, or having the local dimming crush some details. But again, that's not the QLED's fault. That's just a limitation of the technology in comparison to OLED. And I'm sure that, you know, as time goes on, things will change for both. I've noticed that if I talk too negatively about something, people don't like my videos very much. But anyway. So, what do I think of my TV so far? Well, I love this thing, especially for gaming. But I will say that burn-in is still very much a fear of mine, and I haven't really put this thing through a testing purpose of, you know, okay, have I seen any image retention? And that's another thing. Image retention can happen too, and what that does is, let's use the God of War example again, where when you go to a black screen, the Omega symbol is in the corner here, and it's just on a black screen though. It's not actually etched into the image itself. You can mitigate this by having the pixel refresher turned on your TV, and when you turn your TV off, it refreshes the pixels. And or you can run full screen content like this for a while and just let it kind of sort itself out. But burn-in does happen. And so I can't really say that I recommend OLED over QLED or QLED over OLED because at the present moment, despite how long this video is, I haven't really spent enough time with it to really give you a clear indication. And you know what I should have done in my previous video is I should have said I haven't really had enough time to clearly assess, or maybe I should have told you that I spent like 3 or 4 days at my friend's place just fiddling around with his system. But whatever the case may be, again, no system is perfect, right? And the OLED is no exception to this rule. It does a lot of things really well, and it does other things not so good. Like, for example, when looking at, say, Tomb Raider, the game, OLED can pull out the particle details like crazy. Light hitting the ground, maybe, you know, leaves blowing in the wind, stuff like that. Background details or pores in the face, yada yada yada. QLED might not be able to do that to the same extent, but QLED can pull out a lot more detail in the background stuff, like trees and ground and water, and just make a much more colorful image. Using the color range that it has, it's able to get maybe a little bit closer to what our eyes are used to seeing in real life. The OLED can do that pretty well, but it doesn't have the same color range as quantum dots. So yeah, in conclusion, I would say that the B9 is a wonderful purchase. It's not, you know, it's nowhere. How can I put this? I can't really give a recommendation of the B9 or the QLED because I honestly find them both to be very good at what they do. But I will say this, for gaming, at least so far in my experience, OLED is superior for response times. But QLEDs don't have the fear of burn-in. And also, QLEDs are not very far behind in response time. The unfortunate thing is sometimes the picture will lose details because the processing will all be turned off. So you gotta kind of weigh the cons and the positives with this particular purchase. And, you know, I'll revisit this at a later date. And I think what I'll do is I'll bring the QLED in here and I'll compare the same images on the same two TVs. But I need to figure out how I'm going to go about doing that because QLEDs weigh a ton. They're like 80-something pounds. And, you know, I don't really have a stand to put the QLED on presently. And I don't have an HDMI splitter to show you the difference between the two systems. The other thing is there's no HDMI splitters right now which can do HDR. So then, you know, I won't be able to really properly show you what the difference between HDR could be either. Anyway, that being said, so far I love the B9, you know, I'm still getting used to it really, but I hope I talked I know I talked quite a long time, but I hope that I covered everything I could, and that, you know, if you were thinking about getting a TV like this one, maybe, you know, maybe this helped you, or maybe it didn't. Maybe you're still confused. Or maybe you just prefer QLED because you don't want that fear of burn-in. Whatever the case may be, if you like this video, give it a like. Share with your friends if you, oh, for heaven's sakes, I'm tired today. Please share with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't already. And ding that bell if you want to see what I come out with next. And you know what? I admit that I haven't given the Sonos Arc a fair review, and so I'm going to do a video addressing that, because I haven't actually really, you know, had it in my own place, so I guess I can't really judge it, and I'm sure that's why it's gotten so many dislikes. But that being said, guys, stay healthy, stay safe, and that's all for today. Bye!